video. So we're working with her on that, I think, or she's working on that.
Okay, got it. Well, Peyton, while we're waiting on Shelley's audio, do you want to start with roll call then?
Yeah, no, works for me.
Okay, yeah, it looks like the recording's on, so we should be good to go. So we just want to kind of go through all of the ESB members and staff.
Okay.
So Jennifer Fortenberry.
Hey everyone, Rob Wheelheight.
Hey, Grace
Clark.
Oh,
Sorry.
you're good.
Danielle
Grace
Clark.
Nearing. Okay, you go.
Yeah.
Grace Nearing. He's here as well.
Hi, this is Shelley. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Shelley.
Sharon Johnston.
Oh, I think we're back on mute, Shelley.
Shelley, yes.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Say something again.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? This is Shelley.
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay.
All right. Let's see. So we left off. Sharon?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay, super.
All right. So that might be all the ESB members I'm seeing. So staff?
I'm Peyton Ratchford. I'm the planning technician.
I'm Tiffany Farrow. I'm the associate planner.
I'm Evan Punch. I'm the planning intern.
And I'm Shelley, the Hart Planning Director.
Okay. Great.
In there.
All right. And James, you're the new face.
Yes, I'm James Martin. I work with Fielding Homes. I'm on agenda item number 1 tonight. Thank you for having me.
All right. Awesome. Thanks. Okay. So with that, then I think we can jump into our agenda. Let's see here. So, Peyton, I have that pulled up. I'm not sure if you wanted to share your screen or I can.
Oh, I'm muted. Sorry, I was trying to say I could share it. And here's our agenda. There we go. Let me zoom in a little.
Right, so with our roll call complete, we'll officially call our meeting to order. Payne, I'm not sure if you had anything in particular you want to go over with the mission core values. I think that was on the last meeting as well.
It's just a new thing that they're wanting us to do for all of our board meetings where we just kind of read over them. And I have them right here too, just as a reminder of the vision statement, mission statement, and core values.
Okay, great. So I guess any comments on that before we move on? All right.
Nope.
So with that, I'll just need a motion to set our agenda.
So moved.
Seconded.
And who's second? No, that's fine. Now that I'm sharing the screen, I can't see everyone's faces.
Sharon Johnston, seconded.
Okay, and all in favor?
right?
Yeah.
Aye.
Wonderful. And any opposed? Okay. So next up is adoption of the minutes. It looks like we have both the September and October minutes here. Can I get a motion?
Yes.
Motion to adopt minutes, Grace Hearing.
I'll second, Danielle.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Okay, great. So that brings us to our first item on the agenda. So I think at this point, we'll hand it over to either Peyton or our guest.
I'm sorry, this is Shelley. I'll go ahead and lead the request. First, I'm going to try to share my screen, so give me 1 second to, okay. If I can't share it, Peyton, I may need you to, let me try it again. I don't have permission, Peyton, to share my screen. So if you would go to the next item. I don't seem to be able to. Nope. No luck. If you could bring up the item, that would be great. Oh, wait. Is this your screen?
That's me. That's me, Shelley.
Okay. Well, can you go to the staff report, the initial page on that? That would be very helpful.
Oh, no, I just pulled up the site plan. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Hop off.
So again,
I pretended like I knew what I was doing. And
no, we'll get a handle on this. We're working remotely, and of course, technology is just, okay, let's see. Let me try this.
Shelley, you just need the staff report.
Yes, if you bring up the staff report, and then I'll tell you when to scroll through. If you will just get the initial memo up on the screen, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, wonderful. Scroll. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you can stop right there. Perfect. Thank you, Peyton. Okay.
You're welcome.
As you all know, the City of Belmont has recently updated Chapter 11, City's Tree Protection and Landscaping Ordinance. And with this recent update, we really did quite a bit of change to our tree protection process and requirement. Well, this is the first request for tree preservation plan modification. The subject property there's actually 3 properties on Tucker Road. The request is to modify the tree preservation regulations pursuant to section 11.2.2A, which basically says that an applicant can request a modification and to the planning director, and the planning director may utilize the Environmental Sustainability Board as a recommending body for this request. So specifically, the applicant's proposing an alternative plan to section 11.3.7B1. This is the section that requires all existing trees meeting the definition of a protected significant or heritage tree located on a property or within property boundaries to be inventoried. As you recall, you not only, the inventory must include the diameter of the tree species, and the health. Well, the applicant, you can scroll to the next page, please, Peyton. it's the actual request right there is fine. So the applicant, they own 3 parcels, which I'll show you in a minute, that totals 67, almost 68, say 68 acres that are almost entirely wooded. The applicant is proposing to develop these, but they have to go through a process. And a little history behind these properties. These properties have been referred to as the Tucker Road properties, and we have had an application on file for probably about 3 years at least, where the applicant was going to originally propose doing a major subdivision on these 3 properties. The current zoning is general residential / T&D. That means that, and it has an overlay, so the property could be developed at 3 dwelling units to the acre. Well, one of the reasons the properties have not been developed is because there's a lack of water and sewer in the area. And to bring water and sewer to this area of the city would be quite expensive. So I'll let the applicant expand on that a little bit. But what they've been talking to the city more recently about is down zoning this property, down zoning it to a rural residential zoning designation. And then what that means is each lot would have to be 2 acres in size. And with that 2 acres, again, these are all wooded. The applicant has indicated that it is their belief that at least about 38% of these each lot will probably remain wooded. The only part that should be cleared would be the house pad area, and then they'll have to do well and septic. So there would be some clearing with regard to that. So instead of inventory every single tree on the property that meets those definitions, they are proposing an alternative plan. And if you would scroll to the next page, please, Peyton. And what they're proposing is, thank you very much, to inventory 27.24 acres. That's about 38% of all the lot area. And they would survey them according to the ordinance identifying protected significant and heritage trees within these area, as well as all the heritage trees located within the property boundaries. In talking with the applicant further, he has indicated that although they would be inventory not the entire property, but 38%, the only requirement that they would have to meet for tree save is actually 20% of the lot. So what he's indicated is they would inventory about 38%, and then they would place in the required conservation easement, not just 20%, but go up to 30%. So they would actually be preserving 10% more of what's required in the ordinance as an alternative plan. This is, again, the first request, the first project thinking about going through under the new tree ordinance, and the first request for an alternative plan. So I'm going to let the applicant, Mr. James Martin, expand on the request, and they can fill you in. In your packet, I'm sorry, Peyton, will you go one more page down? I want to show you where the properties are located. So the red line are all 3 parcels, so 3 separate properties. And you can see they are wooded. They have both evergreen and deciduous trees on them. And then if you would go down one more, Peyton, please. And then here's showing, as you scroll down, the upper portion, that's one property. There's a Duke Energy line, transmission line that transverses the first property into the second property, and then the bottom property there, the most southern property, is the last piece. And he has kind of redlined the area that he'd anticipate would be undisturbed, or at least I think that would be in the inventory area, the 27 acres. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Martin, if you would like to expand on this discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Shelley. I appreciate that. And good evening to the members of the Environmental Sustainability Board. Shelley did a great job explaining it. We're through the current zoning, we could have much more density than this. There's several reasons why, and you touched on that, Shelley. To run water and sewer to this area, the road improvements needed, it rarely doesn't make sense for the unit count that we could yield. And so we kind of changed our approach and said, what if we do well and septic? And we've done some preliminary septic testing, and that's why the lot lines look a little goofy. We haven't finalized those lot lines yet. And even though I put the red line and put undisturbed, that's accurate. But I think there would actually be a little bit more than that. I didn't want to overcommit. That's really showing the study area that we'd like to do the tree inventory in. That's not to say that everything outside of that line between the line and the road would be cleared. That's not the case. But when you do well and septic, of course, you have to clear for the house and the well area and the driveway, but also your primary septic field as well. You have a primary field and a backup repair field. We would clear that primary field and the well area and the house pad. Those little rectangular boxes are temporary placeholders for house placement. That's where some of the better topography is on each of those areas. But the request is to, since this is a fully wooded site, this lot site plan here is 20 total lots, so extremely low density. Most of these lots will remain wooded, but the cost of doing a tree survey over the entire 70 acres is fairly high. And so we wanted to reduce that amount of study area, but in turn, commit to a higher percentage of tree save. So instead of the 20% being about 13 and a half acres of tree save, it would end up being a little over 20 acres of tree save, which is 30% of 68 acres.
So within the tree ordinance, it allows an applicant to come forth and ask the planning director, and in turn the planning director can ask the ESB board for a recommendation for this request. You may note the last attachment of your packet. Peyton, if you could scroll down. I actually asked the applicant if they go ahead and obtain a cost estimate to see how much it would be to actually survey the entire property, the 68 acres pursuant to the ordinance. And there was the estimate is included in your packet. And that was good information for the city, because again, this is the first project that's gone through. So we wanted to have some idea what it's going to be per acre. Because I can tell you, we have talked, there have been other developments that have talked to the city, but most of them are quite surprised on this regulation that I have one that wants to come through that's 200 acres. And of course, I told them what the requirement was up front, just to make sure they understood all the regulations before they filed. And Peyton, can you go up one screen? You're on a page there you go. That's the cost estimate, but you have it in your packet as well.
This is Sharon. I'm sorry, Peyton.
Yeah, go ahead, Sharon.
Okay, perfect. I'm actually familiar with this property, and so I just wanted to mention that the undisturbed areas are actually, it's actually to my view, quite well located. It's where essentially there's almost like a water course, a watershed in a way, running down.
Can
to
you go up
the cove. And
go up and you'll see a water course in it. Oh wait, yeah, I'm sorry. Go down one more. Go down one more, Peyton, please. And you can see the little squiggly line is sort of on the upper portion. It's like a water course. Go up a little more. There you go.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's actually it's actually a very nice section to leave as the tree save, because that's where a lot of the wildlife is going to be congregating, the bird life along the water course, and I know also from the riverkeeper, that's one of the things you that is actually desirable, because the development is essentially not to disturb or impact the lake, because this is on a cove, actually on two coves, one on Tucker and then one on, what is the other road, the other section of road. So
it's Canal. Can you go down, Peyton? It's Canal and Tanglewood, yes. So Canal comes down, then turns, and then Tanglewood goes, is the middle road.
Yeah. So from my perspective, I feel like it's a very advantageous, siting of the preservation. I know it's very densely treed. There's a lot of trees. So I feel like this is potentially a good solution. Just to weigh in with my thoughts on that, knowing the property.
Okay, so you like the proposed alternative of saving 30% in lieu of the 20?
I do.
In exchange for not having to survey all of it.
Correct, because you could essentially, I think that it's desirable, and I think this is what we wanted when we developed this. It's almost desirable to retain the best natural features of the lots, and so so in this instance, I think James, you've been very sensitive to that, and so I feel like in terms of our intent of maintaining wildlife corridors and the natural beauty, I feel like this is actually looks like a very workable compromise.
So, Shelley, this is Rob Wheelheight. One quick question for Mr. Martin. It appears that some of these, well, first of all, I live right by here, so I'm very familiar with this area myself. I live just down the river from this. Some of these lots look dockable, which I assume they're going to also be subject to the Duke Energy riparian buffer, and so therefore there's probably also a Duke Energy limitation on trees that can be removed, which I think is an added benefit here. So I'm with Sharon. I believe that this alternative to the tree ordinance, I think, meets the intent and purposes of it, and so I'm very comfortable with this. In fact, that undisturbed property looks like in some of these lots it could go as far as several hundred feet before you even hit the water.
Yeah, Robert, to answer your question, we haven't gotten to the point of meeting with Duke to see. Really, the only cove that would have any potential would be the, I can't think of what, right there at lot 7. Sometimes when you look at a site plan, it shows the high water mark, and a site plan may make it look like there's great deep water that's not encumbered by an environmental area designation from Duke Energy, from Duke Lake Management. But we're not planning at this point. If we could, great, but I'm not banking on many of those. Maybe lot 7, but even that might be a stretch.
Sure.
Because you're limited to extending out no more than a third of that cove, which would be a very short dock. That could be valuable for someone, but we haven't got to that point of meeting with them. But you're right. It's Duke. It's a state buffer. Duke kind of controls everything from that. Let's see, Lake Wiley 570 contour down. But there is state regulated buffers in that area as well, for good reason.
Sure.
I guess just one point of clarification in the request. I think the intent of the ordinance is to make sure we're preserving trees of high quality and, focusing more on the inventory of some of the larger sizes. So I guess, are there any concerns that in inventorying that smaller, was it 27 acres, there would be any issue in finding sufficient trees to maintain that 30% canopy commitment?
Well, Jennifer, to answer your question, so he's proposing to inventory the 27 acres and every heritage tree that's 36 inches or greater within the property boundary as a whole. So we would get identification of all heritage trees within the property boundaries, as well as an inventory of what's in that 27 acres. Now, what the tree inventory will reveal is the different tree species and the health of the trees as well in there. So we would evaluate it. We would still need to evaluate it to ensure that the trees within that area are healthy. They first qualify and then they're healthy. And then based on his proposal that 30%, he still has to have the calculations done to show that he's preserving 30% within that area as offered. So that difference of 38% gives him a little wiggle room in the event he tends to have an area that may have some poor quality trees or unqualified trees.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
Okay. Sound like your little one was supporting it in the back as well. But.
Yeah, I think that was an aye in favor. Okay. So then, Shelley, having not gone through this, I guess, are we looking for a decision tonight?
Yes. So hopefully it's up to the board. So as long as we have a quorum, the board can make a recommendation to the planning director, and I ultimately will make a decision. I'm still working with the applicant on the process, whether we're going to go conditional zoning, straight zoning. So we're still working that on. So I'm not going to make the decision right away till we land on the process, but I would like a recommendation from the board.
Actually, I have another question. As far as shoreline, I know it's on the left-hand side of that cove, the property's flatter, but it looks like it's reasonably steep in the kind of lot 7, 8, 9, looking at the contour lines.
Very steep.
It is steep.
Yes.
Are you going to have to?
Can you go up one, Peyton? Can you go up one picture?
Are you going to have to do any shoreline repair that would necessitate removing trees to put riprap or similar on the shoreline?
No, ma'am. Generally, what we find before Fielding Homes, I was worked at Crescent Communities for almost 20 years, so I've got a decent familiarity with the lake and the process and shoreline stabilization. Generally, you do not need it in back of coves. A lot of people do it, in my opinion, it putting good money after bad, but because deep in coves, you're not having the impacts of wakes rushing up against the shoreline that's eating away at the shoreline. So I really would not see anybody doing that. There's always the availability if somebody wanted to do it through barge, they could. There's barge operators on the lake, on Lake Wiley, that could destabilize it from the water, but I'm not sure how much water depth is even there or if it's flagged environmental through Duke Lake Management, if we even could have a pier or shoreline stabilization. a lot of times if it's flagged environmental, you can do a pier, but you're not allowed to do shoreline stabilization. But sometimes you can do neither. It all depends. But deep in a cove like that, I really wouldn't see any reason why you would want to do that and spend money to do it.
Okay, that's good. I do know that it's very shallow in there because we actually looked at a lot in the other, further down Tucker, and it's really too shallow to put a dock. So so that makes sense what you're saying. Thank you.
It's almost too shallow to take your boat further north of there.
Oh, interesting.
So, Shelley, are you looking for us to make a motion for approval or disapproval?
Yes, I'm looking for a motion from this board on a recommendation to approve their alternative plan as presented, or you can propose a little modification if you wanted, or recommend disapproval.
Well, this is Rob. I would move to approve the alternative compliance as recommended in the letter, and would support it.
Okay.
Rob, before we move forward, and I appreciate you taking the next step, but I do have a couple of questions for James. I just want to make sure that I understand this information correctly. So this this quote that you received from Davy Resource Group, this is the cost that would be required to survey the entire property. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
So this is the cost that you'd like to avoid, which looks like it's less than $1,000 per lot.
Right.
And is that primarily because you want the well and sewer to take kind of priority over any trees that might be in their way?
It's just when you got 68 acres and I'm proposing 20 total lots, the majority of this site is extremely wooded and will remain extremely wooded. So our thought is I'm surveying a significant amount of area at 68 acres to show that there's trees that will remain, most of which will remain. So I'm trying to limit the scope of that. But on the flip side, commit to saving more than the minimum of 20%, the required 20%. That's why it's not just a request to reduce without giving something in return. The give is an additional 10% of tree save.
Right, and again, just asking the question. So once a homeowner takes ownership of this lot, there would be no restriction for them to remove those trees. Is that correct?
Now, that we would put a tree conservation or whatever Shelley wanted us to put on that area that we determined. We would have to come to her and say, here's our plan, that 30% we agreed to, here's where that will be, which is within that red area. And then that would be on the record plat for that property.
Okay, thank you for that additional information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was something we left out, which was probably worth mentioning. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Becky, so by ordinance, any required tree save area is required to have a tree conservation easement recorded when the parcels are recorded. That way it follows title of ownership, and it will be disclosed for any buyer that that's a restricted area from tree removal.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any other questions.
Great. With that, I guess we just need a second to Rob's motion.
This is Sharon. I'm willing to second that. I'm not sure whether we how we perhaps Shelley, you could answer this. How we do we have an evaluation, or how does it move forward? You know, once everything's finalized, is there sort of a visit, a site visit at a certain point, or how do you know?
Well, Yeah, so the process is that if this is ultimately granted, they would have to continue following the tree ordinance with regard to preparing the tree inventory, identifying what's in it, proving that the 30% tree save area is there. We would also, when we get the tree inventory on the site, we'll also evaluate the location of the heritage trees, even if they're outside of that 30% area, and make some recommendations as far as, buildable area. And I know when it comes to septic, they'll have to find the best area for that, but we'll try to work with the property owner, the developer, in trying to ensure that the heritage trees are elsewhere on the lot are preserved. Then as they would have to continue showing these areas through construction plan phase, and an easement would get recorded on it. There is no field trip to walk through on it to see what's left, but we will have all documentation and plans. We are trying to get a drone, though. I can tell you, we are trying to get a drone to help us with this type of stuff, so we could actually video our progress on our tree save.
I love that.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's okay. So I'm happy to second it then.
Okay.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This is great.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and any opposed?
I just want to say to Mr. Martin, thank you for bringing this forward. It's very thoughtful. You're the first to bring one of these to us, so thank you for your patience as we figure out the process behind it too.
Great. Yeah, it was very smooth. All thanks go to Shelley. She's a great guide. So thank you very much to all of you. Hope you have a great night.
Thank you.
And you as well. Thanks. Okay, well, that was exciting.
Shelley,
right. Yeah, thank you,
is Shelley still on?
Yes, I am still on.
Hey, Shelley, this is very important, and it adds another capability for the ESB to consider. And do you expect these kinds of exceptions, every month, or what? I know we just changed the ordinance, so it's hard to really answer that. But what?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So some of the reaction I'm getting from some people, I would say yes. We could probably expect more. I think it makes more sense in some cases than others. I think this particular case, number one, they're down zoning. So from going from a 100 plus lot subdivision to maybe 20 lots and all 2-acre lots and lower density. It's consistent with the lots in the area. They're all, larger lots, wooded. It makes sense. There's a perennial stream on there and I know there's wetlands and stuff. So it just makes sense. We may have more conventional, larger development where it may be more of a factor of they just don't want to pay to survey all whatever acres there are. So I think it's really an opportunity for the board, ESB board, to look at them case by case and then consider, I think it's also a way to leverage, if people are willing to preserve more canopy and we're getting quality canopy in the right location. So, as far as environmentally sustainable, it makes sense. I think we should use it use it as an opportunity. But we won't know until they start coming in. But everybody I've talked to so far, when I tell them what the requirement is, they're like, "Oh no, we need an alternative," and they're kind of surprised. But as Becky, as you pointed out, one reason at first I was hesitant even bringing it. I looked at the cost, and it worked out in this case to be about $1,000 for each lot, you know, which typically if it's a lot more lots, it'd be a lot less on the developer to do it. But in the grand scheme of things, you know, $1,000 for a lot, they would typically just pass on to the buyer if that was an extra cost for them. So I think, you know, I think you guys have an opportunity to be very selective, and if it makes sense, great. If it doesn't, let's just stick to the ordinance.
Yeah, that's a good point, Shelley. If I'm buying a 7-acre lot, $1,000 is probably not going to make or break the deal, honestly.
Well, yeah, that was a per lot deal. You know, if you look at it, it was $18,000 for 67 acres. Well, break that down by acre. That's not a whole lot by acre. Yeah. So
good point.
It was actually less than I thought it was going to be. So that was one reason when he shared that with me, I thought that was great information. So when developers are starting to complain about the cost, we have a ballpark of what it should run. And the person that gave the bid was Joe Joyner of Davie Resource Group, who wrote the ordinance. So I was glad that he provided the estimate, so he knew what the requirements were. So it should be very accurate.
And I do like the downgrading to rural residential, and also the large size lots. I think that's really what's me in this case, because, you know, with the larger size lot, there's really it's expensive to clear the trees too. So there's really, it's not in their, in their interest to spend, extra money on clearing trees on a lot. What the homeowner then does is different, but it's the higher density developments where I feel like there's more of a threat to the tree canopy, where every square foot is, is valuable, in terms of how many houses you can get in there. So I think, that I actually like it if having to do this, follow the tree canopy ordinance actually sometimes, moves people in the direction of actually, changing the, to larger lots. Yeah, I think that's actually a good compromise and a good way for everybody to
Yeah, I agree.
I'm glad this was our first one to review. I'm guessing they won't all be this straightforward.
Yes. So what I'll do is I will keep the board informed on the progress of this project. So just as a little report at your future meetings.
Thank you for that, Shelley.
Thank you. And thank you for the quote up front. That was good to see.
Great. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So next item on our agenda, this one I'll hand over to Peyton to share the responses to the survey we've gotten so far.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and switch my content now.
And we did close the survey already, didn't we, Peyton?
We did, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So in total, just want to make sure everyone can see this. Is everyone good with that?
I'm on my phone, so it's very small, but
okay.
But I can see it. I'll try and scroll in.
Okay. So we received 93 results in. So that was good. I thought that was pretty good for the survey. And these were the results. I did the questions that we talked about at the last meeting, and I know that I sent out 2 for the board to review, so I did go with those. And we allowed people to only select 2 answers. so they could not choose more than 2. They could just choose 1 or they could choose 2. So these were the results. So we had 13 people selected urban agriculture. I'm going to actually go to the next page because it will, oops, there we go. You can kind of see the whole answer choice. So there we go. So for urban agriculture, 13 people selected that that's a focus for the board. 25 people said energy and environmental reduction should be the focus. 46 people said watershed protection, and we received 70 responses for smart growth and sustainable infrastructure. And for some reason, I'm not 100% sure why, but we had 93 total answers, but someone did skip this question and they answered the next one, which the question was asking if you were a Belmont resident or business owner. I'm not sure why they didn't answer the first one, but we have 92 for this question, which I thought was still pretty good. And so that's kind of where our results fell. We did have some comments because I did leave an open-ended section for people to maybe kind of add things we were missing or things that they felt like these answers did not encompass. We got a positive response for smart growth is great, but they were also concerned for the wildlife. Some people said a little bit something about roads. They're a little bit tight. Someone is appreciative of the emphasis on the preservation of forest areas and waterways. So that person, I guess, voted for watershed protection. This person was talking about the growth of housing development. They needed to slow that, but also they said require the builder to leave a certain percentage of every plot of land of trees, which their grammar was a little bit off, but we already do that with our new tree ordinance. So I was like, well, that's one thing that's been taken care of. And another thing they said was just clean up the sidewalks and pick up trash. So just kind of little things that we could do or something like that. So those are our main results. Does anyone have any thoughts, comments on this?
You know, Peyton, first of all, thank you for putting this survey together. It's always good to check the pulse of those we serve. And, you know, I'm actually surprised that energy environmental reduction was scored as low as it was. Only 27% of the respondents. I know it's a relatively small sample size, but I would have thought that might have been the highest, but there again, only because I work in the energy sector. So,
right.
But I am kind of surprised at that, to be honest with you.
I was also a little bit surprised. I thought it would be higher as well. But yeah, you are right. It was a little bit of a small sample size. We published it, and we also put it on the water bill, the little note section at the bottom. I think by the time, if we would have pushed it again, we maybe could have gotten a few, but I think too, because we are just trying to prep for council next week, I think we were kind of rushed as well. But I do think it kind of gave us somewhat of a foundation to build off of when we kind of figure out what the plan is for the board. So.
This is Becky. I'm not surprised at all that the most popular response to this was around like promoting smart growth, you know, saving trees. I think there are a lot of people in this area who want to slow the development, and this is probably, you know, whether it's for environmental reasons or their own personal reasons, I'm not surprised that that's kind of the number one choice.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts?
No, I guess at this point, that might just lead into the next item, which is really just how do we take these results and plan for the working session with council. Okay. What do we want to discuss and maybe brainstorm some ideas of, you know, how we might want to use that and and identify maybe some projects.
I don't know if someone was speaking.
This is Tiffany. I was just going to add a clarification that I think is important as we're looking at these results. And something to maybe continue further discussions on based on the results here, is that smart growth is not saying that growth is slowed down. It's just determining or providing feedback as to the form that it takes. And so my understanding of smart growth and sustainable infrastructure is that it may equal higher densities within a smaller building footprint, but it's that direction in terms of the building form allows for less of the site overall to be disturbed and allows for the protection of more natural area. So I think that that's important to consider. Is I know that the community is concerned about the speed of growth, but to me, smart growth generally refers to just the form of that development as opposed to the speed and density of the development.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany. And I apologize. I didn't mean to imply that that was our mission was to slow development, rather that I think it's probably a common sentiment among Belmont residents. So I could see how this might fall in line with that thought.
I would agree with that, Becky. And I know based on the wording, sometimes people can answer in a particular way. But I have heard that sentiment before as well. And I just think that there are certain things that are outside of our control, and one of which is the development appetite based on the economy and other factors. But one thing that is within our control is regulation of the building form and what we can do on the land. And so utilizing what we can control, I think, can be helpful, and to have you guys as advocates and hear this being raised in the community, I think is an important piece of information to help guide us as we move forward.
So, I mean, that's a good conversation, because it kind of leads to the next topic, as Jennifer suggested, which is, you know, what does this survey outcome imply in terms of how do we see the Environmental Sustainability Board taking on additional scope, if you will, or additional activities to respond to this survey versus, you know, other boards? Because smart growth could actually fall under the Belmont Planning Board. You know, one could argue. So, you know, what role do we want to play in trying to address these responses? That to me is the more important question coming out of this.
Absolutely. So just kind of to start off that prep for the council workshop discussion, I just wanted to point one thing out, that the current bylaws, if you reference them in section 2-2, the Environmental Sustainability Board should have the following charge and duties, and it does in the bylaws say energy use. So I think that could open up the discussion too, if we are gonna change the bylaws and the focus of that, if we want to maybe scratch out and replace based on the survey, leave as is and maybe kind of work that in. But I wouldn't recommend adding a fourth, maybe just to see how things go, adding one more focus item. But I did just want to put out or bring this to attention, that there is a third option in the bylaws, but that will need to be changed to place. And I think that should also be brought up in the conversation with council.
Peyton, I think you shared this earlier, but the council meeting is on Monday, this coming Monday.
Yes.
And
yes.
That meeting is held inside, is it TechWorks?
I will need to check. It's either going to be at TechWorks or our new CityWorks building. I'll need to look at that. We're kind of in the process right now of transitioning from having our meetings at TechWorks to our new location. So things are kind of a little bit crazy at the moment. Tiffany or Shelly, does anyone know where this will go?
Peyton, I believe it's at our new CityWorks. I'm going to text the city clerk real quick and confirm that the room is ready to go.
Okay. Thank you.
So they have appropriate distancing set up and
They do. Yes, it's a large conference type room. It's called the community room. It's on the first floor of our new location. I can once we kind of figure out who's going and who will be the spokesperson, I can send out a reminder email to you guys just to say, hey, it's at this time, don't forget type thing, kind of mark it on your calendars. So with that being said, who is planning on attending this workshop? I know we had a few last meeting say that they were going to be interested, but we're going to try to just see who from the board wanted to go and have that conversation.
Yeah, I was planning on attending.
Okay.
I was also planning. I need to actually drive to Atlanta that afternoon and that evening. So I may have a bit of a conflict, but I'm also not a big fan, just to let this board know, of meeting in person inside a building. So that part gives me a little bit of pause, honestly.
Okay.
Peyton, I did confirm it is at City Works.
Okay. So it will be at our new building.
Peyton, let me mull it over. I'll give you a better response. I also thought Doug is not joining us tonight, but I thought he had expressed some interest, in, if I recall correctly.
I believe so, and I can reach out to him as well.
Okay.
I think you are right. I think he did say that he had interest in this. Anybody else interested in attending?
Jason, if you could just remind me what is the expectation? Oh, it's a lot of background noise. What is the expectation on the role that we're doing? Could you just remind me of what are we observers, or are we actually, is there a presentation that we're doing?
So I kind of envisioned having a spokesperson on behalf of the ESB board kind of go over the current responsibilities of the board and the proposed maybe third additional duty that you guys are proposing. And then it's basically just to kind of have a conversation with council so everyone can get on the same page and what council is expecting y'all to do and vice versa, because I think there is just like a little bit of a gap of communication. So it's just a conversation, and if anybody from the board has questions that they'd like to ask them as well, it's just kind of a time to everyone to get on the same page. Any questions need to be asked, any answers needed. It's just kind of a opportunity for that.
So we're an agenda item on the city council meeting, is that correct?
Yes. And it's also a chance to present the 2021 work plan so council kind of can see what y'all have in store for the new year.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I probably can attend as long as there's adequate social distancing. Then yeah, I'm hesitant like Rob, but I if there's, yeah, if I'm sure it's going to be adequately safe.
Yes, we've been practicing all the social distancing things that we can do in our in-person meetings. So we'll be wearing masks and doing things like that to just be as safe as we can in these times.
Peyton, do you or Shelley have any sense of, what kind of attendance do we see at these city council meetings lately at TechWorks? Are there citizens showing up?
This is Shelley. Well, we usually have the same handful at the council meetings and workshops, but now this meeting is the opportunity for both the city's Main Street Board and the Environmental Sustainability Board to share their work program and make sure that it's supported. And one thing I wanted to throw out there, one thing I wouldn't be hesitant to ask council for is a little money in the budget to help support your initiatives. So right now, anything that we do, like the tree tags and so forth, we find the money in the planning budget. But, you know, as we're talking about work programs and what you're doing for trees and recycling and whatever this other thing is, it's ask for a little money in the next upcoming budget to help support your initiatives. But the Main Street Board is about 10 people. The council is, there's 6, 7, 8. There's probably going to be about 20 to 30 people in the room, and it's a real big room, and we all spread out. So we haven't had any problems with social distancing. And if it gets too many, so say the ESB board is first on the agenda, and if there's a lot of people there from the Main Street, we could ask them to wait in one of the other conference rooms until we shift people if we need to, because we want everyone to feel comfortable.
Yeah, Shelley, thank you for that. I think that's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would also like to chime in and just say that I appreciate you guys' transparency, acknowledging your comfort levels, because I think that that's important so that we can work out solutions on how we can sometimes do meetings that tend to be a little bit more effective in person, but also do it safely and where everybody is comfortable to meet. So thank you so much for your transparency.
Yeah, I mean, Tiffany, I can't wait till we actually meet in person again, whenever that might be.
Okay, so I have Jennifer, potentially Doug, which I'm going to reach out to him, Sharon, and then Rob said you had a conflict. Potentially you would let me know, feel it out. So is there anybody else that would like to go, or y'all other people gonna sit this one out, have other conflicts?
Hey, Peyton, it's Danielle. I'm available to go, but I can sit out if it's going to be too crowded. But I'm available, and I'd like to go if possible.
Okay, that's awesome. And thank you guys for that. So I know I sent out the WebEx link yesterday, and I sent I attached the work plan. I know we didn't have everyone at the meeting last month. I know everyone was busy with babies and everything. So I just didn't know if anybody had a chance to review the work plan that we had kind of been working on and talking on, if anyone had any major changes, or if everyone was kind of comfortable with where we were right now.
I just had a question on the timing of the RFP. So it looks like some of the items listed in here was the RFP interview process, which I'm guessing is with some of the bidders. But is there some steps before that around like reviewing the draft RFP before it goes out?
So I think I do need to maybe tweak this a little bit. I know that from what I've heard lately, the RFP is going out mid-January. So I'm kind of thinking maybe between January and March is kind of when that committee will meet.
I did, Jennifer, was that you? This is Shelley that asked that question.
Yeah.
I couldn't say, I'm sorry. Yes, I did remind Adrian. I was in a meeting last week with him, and we touched on the RFP process. And I did remind him that one of the requests from this board is to be able to look at the draft before it goes out. So that is still in the plan. So that is still going to be coming to you probably next month. Yeah, so they're just getting their game plan. We hired a new assistant city manager that's going to help lead the effort, along with our new incoming public works director. So they're all getting a game plan, but I did remind them of that.
Great.
Awesome.
Thanks, Shelley.
So, Peyton, do we think it's worth maybe adding a bullet for next month for that, just so that city council sees and we have full intentions of reviewing that?
I think that's a great idea.
I can definitely do that.
So Peyton, the only other question I had was, we couldn't do Arbor Day celebration this year, but if we get to April and we're not ready to do that again, is there a backup plan for Arbor Day? Because Arbor Day occurs always in April. So,
yes.
And so does the Masters, but yet the Masters is going to play this weekend, right? So there's always exceptions to tradition.
Yes.
Is that something we need to maybe consider, or what?
So, which I'll need to touch base with our events coordinator, but I feel like I've heard maybe looking at alternative ways to celebrate Arbor Day if we are still under these circumstances come April, maybe try to find a way to somehow still do Arbor Day, but do it maybe in a virtual way, or have people celebrate independently. I think that's something that we can definitely still work out, and maybe something that if we have the Arbor Day planning little subcommittee to help with, that's probably something that we could figure out for that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Peyton, the plan looks great. I just wasn't sure. Are there any updates we wanted to make from the survey results? I know there was a lot of emphasis on the preservation of the waterways, and I have spoken with the riverkeeper a couple of months ago. I just happened to know John, and I wasn't sure if there was anything that we wanted to integrate in here as far as some kind of joint efforts or similar.
I do think that is a good idea. I think to partner with existing people, like Keep Belmont Beautiful. I know they do a lot of stuff, so partner with them to maybe do a small little project. I'm not 100% familiar with the river. Is it the River Keeper you said, or something like that? I'm still kind of new and trying to figure things out. But we definitely could maybe try to figure that out to partner with them to do a project. Do you have an ideal timeline?
By timeline, well, I mean, we could probably have them come and speak at a meeting. They do have a very interesting tool where they actually can evaluate. I was thinking about it when we were reviewing the request, on the tree preservation, where they actually are able to evaluate a piece of land and put a value on trees and water courses and such like, to actually quantify them in a different way rather than dollars, put like a dollar and cents value to them in preserving them. So I had a very fascinating chat with John Searby, and so I'm sure they would love to come and speak at one of the meetings. So perhaps that would spur some, thoughts as to, maybe that's what we need to do, is have each of the groups that we think we may want to collaborate with just come in and speak with us, and then we see where there may be crossover, and then figure out how to add that into the plan if there's anything that suggests itself.
And I think that is a good idea. I think maybe hold off on that just for the time being until we can figure out what our third priority is going to be. And then maybe kind of based on either survey results or however the board would like to go, we can find these organizations or these existing programs to partner with that would help us contribute to these goals like recycling, tree task, or whatever the third may be. But I think too, maybe we can just kind of get a feel for how 2021 is going to go, and whatever the third task is, I kind of had an envision to see how this goes, and then within the year 2021, whatever the third item may be is kind of the year where we plan to roll the third item out in 2022, because I think it might take some planning to see how it can kind of mesh with our existing plan and how we're going to take that on. So that was just kind of my thought on that. But I think that's a great idea to partner with existing things. It kind of takes some of the work off of us, because I think partnerships are always great and they already know what to do, like keep Belmont beautiful and things like that. So I think that is a good idea. I think also we just maybe need to target these have these ideas kind of more in line with what our three main goals will be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I just was thinking if we're going to publish this, plan, and I don't think we are going to, and it maybe if we're presenting it at the meeting, and it becomes, and it's a public document, I wasn't sure how much we wanted to tie it back to, what was in the survey, but just a thought. But sounds like you've kind of got it, thought it through.
Yeah.
And I wanted. Oh, was someone speaking?
Yes, this is Shelley. So, Sharon, I think that's a great idea. So I noticed on the survey, smart growth and the concern about development, smart growth was your highest response. And interesting enough, we do interact with like the Lake Wiley Commission when development comes in. If it's anywhere near the water, we try to connect them up with the developers because they want to review the plans, and they have an active role with development adjacent to the lake. So what would be interesting is to explore those partnerships with these different resources to see how maybe we can incorporate them in some of our development process or something, under the guidance of the ESB board. So we're not really taking on a big new thing. We're finding out resources and how they can help us with water quality near the lake and so forth, and be that resource for us. And we can, as staff, pull them in. So I think there's some things, as you mentioned, that we can explore, whether it's Keep Belmont Beautiful or so forth. The more we know about what the other agencies do and their resource, how we can use them as a resource, it might help us target some of this other area we're hearing back from the residents or the concern or initiative. Yeah.
What I was thinking, even in terms of promotion, wise, we should, it should almost be like a shared like stamp, almost like, we have our logo, and it's almost like, like you have organic stamp, it's kind of like, these initiatives are, are a partnership with ESB, and so that just helps us get our identity out there.
Yeah. So your mission and your mission and your purpose is being partnered with someone else's mission and purpose out there for a greater good. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, but otherwise, I think the plan looks great, Peyton. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharon. So, I guess it's kind of. Oh, did anyone have another comment?
Hey, Peyton. This is. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rob.
No, I was just.
Okay.
I didn't notice this before, but I saw National Energy Awareness Month in October, and it caused me to think about, is there something we want to plan between now and then? We have 11 months, and so, is there any kind of energy conservation or energy reduction initiative that we might want to think about that we could take advantage of National Energy Awareness Month in October to make an announcement on behalf of the city of Belmont? And if so, what would that look like? You know, and so I just wanted to tee that up as a high level discussion that maybe we think about in future board meetings. I don't want to give up on the concept of energy. Even though it was only selected by 27% of our 92 respondents, I still think it's pretty important and certainly has an environmental impact. It's just something to think about since you've actually highlighted it here. And you know, I had forgotten that October is National Energy Awareness Month from the DOE.
Yeah. So when we kind of read over the bylaws and saw that energy was in there, I just kind of added this in there. Like you said, kind of just to bring awareness, but I think not that it's not important when we can't do something for it, maybe something small, just kind of like a little PSA on social media or something like that. I just kind of threw it in here because it is one of the 3 that's listed in the bylaws, one of the 3 main focus items. So if we do stay the energy route, definitely think we can leave that in there and kind of build on it for maybe the end of next year, definitely for 2020 as we kind of, or 2022, excuse me, that work plan. But I think it's kind of just more important for the board to make a decision on what that 3rd one is so we can kind of see where we go and if we need to expand on energy or that kind of thing, or if we want to go back to the survey and then focus on that and kind of start building and researching and trying to figure out what the ESB wants to do for that specific goal for 2022. Okay. But I do think, also, I'm not sure if anyone saw, I posted just a little recycling thing for Belmont Recycling Month on Facebook. So I just threw that out on social media the other day. So if you could share it, just kind of spreading awareness to, just trying to up our public education tasks that we have for the ESB. So I just wanted to share with that as well.
That's great. And actually, Rob, I think you're onto something there. And what you're saying too, Peyton, about education is that perhaps that's scored lower because people are not as aware of what that means and the implications, you know, so, or it feels out of reach, you know, so I think it is an interesting one to almost take as an education, you know, component. So, yeah, and that just made me think of something else that we possibly should put on the work plan, that we do a survey every year, and then we can track how things change and how maybe we're moving the needle with our efforts, you know. So just another thought.
A survey each year asking about what? I just want to make sure I'm on the same page.
So similar to what we did, but so we can constantly almost be taking a temperature check of you know, where people's interests lie and whether that changes and shifts. So if we do some education around Energy Awareness Month, the next year when we do a survey, do we then see that we actually have a higher return of interest in that because perhaps the waterway protection scored so highly because we have at least 2 bodies in the area who have been doing a lot of work around that. So it's top of mind with people. So perhaps some of what the survey showed us is areas that we need to focus on to raise awareness, you know, so the lower scoring ones maybe where we need to focus on raising some awareness. Just a thought, you know.
Yeah, we could kind of incorporate a community feedback survey saying, hey, what do you think the ESB is doing well? What areas do you think we could kind of strengthen on for our work plan for the following year, or just something maybe along those lines?
Yeah, it's always good when you have metrics year over year to see how it compares and how things are changing and you've grown. So anyhow, but I like that idea of yours, Rob, with the national energy awareness.
And to that point, Sharon and Peyton, I wonder if we just want to recolor that bullet and not make it an administrative task, but color it green for energy tasks.
Okay.
Just to call out energy separately as something along with recycling and trees that we focus on.
Yeah, so, and I think that kind of brings us back to the point of just trying to get that third target area to see what it's going to be like. And so we can go ahead and incorporate that into the work program for the future years. So I guess it's kind of now just time for the board maybe to decide where they want their main target area to be. Or if you want to leave energy alone too, and maybe kind of see how energy goes, and then maybe farther on down the road, just kind of see if you want to reevaluate. But I'm just looking, I guess, for direction from the board.
Yeah, and I don't mean to steer this conversation directly in that category, but you know, it is something I'm very much focused on. That's all.
Well, Robert, I was going to say, given the expertise and the passion we have on this board around sustainable energy, I think that is a very logical next, focus for this board, to focus on energy. And specifically, one thing that we might be able to do is spread awareness around the increase in property value with residential solar. Also spread awareness around, North Carolina is, I believe, the second highest producing solar state in the country.
Yeah.
And connect our residents with the resources that are out there for, different programs that exist. I know Duke Energy, sometimes has rebates, sometimes they run out early. But, those are kind of some things that we might be able to just kind of pull together for our residents to spread awareness on.
I agree. Are you wanting us to decide that tonight, or is it? Are there certain topics that are up for evaluation, or or is it how do we arrive at this decision?
Yeah. Well, I kind of envisioned maybe to have a position picked just so you could take that to council, because I know it is a kind of a quick turnaround and it's on Monday, but to just go ahead and kind of have that third goal established, and it doesn't have to be completely set in stone, because I do think it is important to have their feedback, but if you do stick to energy use, it's already in the bylaws, so that is a good thing to have working behind you, because you won't really have to add a whole different thing. It's already in your bylaws. But I think to just kind of have a plan narrowed down before you go to council would just be my recommendation.
I think I'm fine. I'm not sure what the other candidates, on the list were, but I'm fine with energy. I mean, we just built a house. We have solar panels, and we landed up using half of what was recommended by the solar company, and we're actually covering all of our costs. We have, on-demand hot water. We, everything's underfloor heating. I mean, we've designed and built a completely energy-friendly house, and it is so, and we have all the expertise on the board. So I think, we have a lot of, real, experience on, just how to make this easier or educate people on what they can do. So I'm fine to go with the energy suggestion for the third topic.
I guess one question for the group, just given how many of the respondents picked the smart growth, I think just to make sure that we are covering that, if not with the ESB, maybe with the planning board, would that be worth discussing with City Council, making sure we just bring to their attention the responses around smart growth, and it's something that we don't think the ESB should own entirely ourselves. That's something that, would probably span multiple boards.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing as Jennifer, that, I'm fine with energy being the third topic, but are we making sure that we're incorporating the survey results? from the actual, citizen responses as best we can. As I, if it's either under us or under the planning board, I think that's something to consider, definitely.
And I think
Hi,
that's, sorry, Shelley.
I'm sorry. That's okay. Hi, this is Shelley. So I do want you to know that I definitely, Jennifer, I love the idea. I think you definitely should share the results and development and smart growth is one of the top initiatives, balanced growth and sustainable growth with the City Council and the Planning Board. We are currently following direction from the City Council in amending ordinances and taking them through the Planning Board and Council related to growth-related issues. So, but that is just driving it home, that survey that you received. So I think you should definitely share that with them. And if they have any ideas to share the council with how you can help, like with the tree ordinance and that's something that might help with the smart growth under your umbrella, then that might come out in that conversation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Be sharing what we've achieved, because I do feel like the tree ordinance is a big step towards that smart growth. I mean, that was in response to, people in Belmont, being unhappy with the rate of trees being taken down. And so I feel like, if part of, are we sharing sort of our success from this past year in terms of what we achieved there?
Yeah, and I agree. If anything, it just gives us more kind of like energy to like stay where we are with the tree ordinance and like Shelley said, like be selective about who we allow to make exceptions to that ordinance. So like it supports our tree tasks, and some of the other things called out in smart growth might not be under our umbrella.
Yes, acting, together with the planning department, that we're like we did with the ordinance, we were called on to assist with that, and we now have this ongoing responsibility. So I don't know, I feel like that really should guide it, because do we have enough power to influence smart growth? I'm not sure on that point.
I think, Sharon, that depends on the definition of the word smart, because it could be a broad word. But, it brings up the question whether or not, energy should be its own ordinance outside of trees and certainly building codes that the city has. There are a lot of cities that have their own energy ordinances, and that's a much bigger discussion than we're going to be able to accomplish tonight. So we'll save that for a future time. But to me, energy it goes beyond the buildings itself. I mean, if you think about a master plan for the city, it also involves transportation. Energy certainly impacts our environmental footprint, and energy. In fact, a significant amount of energy that the city consumes and uses goes towards water and wastewater treatment. And so, we could think of energy in a broader sense and encompass a lot of scope within, the things that we need to think about in terms of energy effectiveness.
That's sort of where I was thinking too, Rob, is that is, that is something that is within our control, and I do think it dovetails nicely into smart growth, because Belmont has a fantastic long-range plan that has greenways and sidewalks, and I mean I think Belmont's got a fantastic plan for smart growth. So I guess I'd be looking to find out, what specifically, we need to be focusing on. And I think the energy is perhaps one specific example.
So then it sounds like we're all kind of coming to agreement that energy may be a gap that really no one else is focusing on, and that can be our reasoning to council as to why we're proposing that as our focus area, given it was the kind of third highest response, and just make sure that we kind of validate with them. They feel that other groups have the other items covered, and then, essentially ask if there's any gaps within those that they think we can help fill. Otherwise, hopefully we'll kind of get their approval to start expanding our work in the energy area. And Rob, to your point, I think, making sure we're clear that's beyond just, the city's energy. That can include awareness around the communities, their own energy use, and then also transportation and, fuels.
Yep.
Awesome. So that's really good. I'm really happy that we got to decide on that. So I guess just kind of some admin stuff for the council meeting. Is anyone willing to be the spokesperson that's going to kind of try to just lead the group in a sense of just kind of saying the duties and the plan, and kind of to maybe summarize what we've been talking about within the last few months for them?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Peyton.
Okay, thank you. So another thing that that needs to kind of be talked to about council is Sharon is technically an ex officio member. And I think this kind of just opens the discussion for the board for y'all to kind of deliberate and see how you feel about this, but potentially discussing with them adding an ETJ member, which Sharon, especially after tonight's discussion, is a valued member of this board, but could be switched from an ex officio member to a potential ETJ member, and adjusting the bylaws accordingly. So Sharon could be a voting member. And with also that kind of being said, since Sharon's technically not a voting member and she did make some motions tonight, would anyone be willing to go on record for her seconds of setting the agenda and making the motion to approve the case presented for the trees case down on Tucker Road? I'm sorry, I didn't catch this sooner, but I just wanted to bring that to y'all's attention as well.
Peyton, I don't know what ETG means. Can you define that, please?
So our ETJ is not in technically within Belmont city limits, but the land in there applies to under our zoning. So it's technically not in the city limits, but it is a part of Belmont. And so some boards do have, like our planning board has an ETJ member. Shelley might be able to help me a little bit explain it more.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Peyton. So ETJ stands for extraterritorial jurisdiction. This was more popular when cities used to do a lot more annexation, but what it means is it's usually areas of the unincorporated areas of the county that are adjacent to existing city boundaries, where you would anticipate in the future these areas coming into the city's jurisdiction in the future. Annexation laws have changed, so now everything's voluntary, but they used to have involuntary annexation where these areas had to be mapped out. They were subject to the city's zoning ordinance, but that's all. They didn't have, they don't pay city taxes or anything like that, but they were areas identified for possible future annexation. So the city still has areas around the city's current boundaries, especially on the peninsula, that are subject to the city's zoning regulations, but are technically not in the city's city limit. So they are in what we call our ETJ area. State law says, especially with planning, since the ETJ area is subject to zoning laws, that the cities with ETJ have to have a member, a resident that lives in the ETJ represent their area on the planning board. Now, that's my knowledge. That's the only board that requires it because it's tied specifically to zoning and planning regulations. But Sharon has served us very well. She technically doesn't live in the city boundaries, but in the city's ETJ. So it'd be nice to have her as a regular member if the board so chooses.
And ETJ also means, Shelley, that they're not in any other city limit? So it's unincorporated county? Gaston County?
Correct.
Okay.
Unincorporated, yes. So they live in Gaston County, unincorporated county, but they are subject to the city's zoning regulations. They don't get any city services. Some might have city water, but none of the other privileges as if you live in the city of Belmont.
Thank you.
Well, Peyton, I will go on record for taking the motion in a second. In this case, and if the next step for us to decide if we want to make a motion to change our bylaws to include one ETJ member.
So, maybe Tiffany and Shelley, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have some other changes that we would need to make to the bylaws. And I was gonna make a draft, like these are just simple things like the go-to agendas still say Belmont City Hall, which our meetings whenever we meet in person again will be in the City Works building. Since the board has more people now and the quorum used to be 3, but we propose moving it to 5. So just things like that. We are just like minute changes we are going to make, and I could send a draft for the board to review this. So we wouldn't do this tonight. This was just this was just something to have a conversation with council about on Monday.
Yeah. So to clarify for the board, the number of members per any city appointed board or commission has to be approved by city council. So if you're going to, typically you can change bylaws for any board yourself. The board can change it except where it comes to membership. So what Peyton's looking for is just to see if this board would like to add an ETJ member as a voting member of this board. And then when you meet with council at the workshop, you'll need to make that recommendation to council, and then they have the ability to grant it.
So just one clarification, we go to an even number of members. Do we still reserve the right to have an ex officio member appointed to this board?
So with this proposed membership, the ex officio member would not vote. So it would total to 7 voting members. Did that answer your question?
Oh, no,
so
Peyton, I think what he was asking is he going to is the plan to maintain the ex officio position as well as add an ETJ position?
Thanks, Shelley. That's correct.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I didn't quite catch that.
That's right.
I think so. Maybe especially I think of course, the board would need to discuss this, but maybe trying to find a tree expert or landscape expert, since the board now is become more, or is interacting more with the tree and landscape ordinance, and that ordinance kind of has given the board more power and review, I would say. So maybe just I would recommend yes, and trying to try to find a new tree expert that could be of assistance to the board.
Okay.
But ultimately, it is up to you guys.
Just one other clarification. So I see on the side here, it says 6 regular members, but under the current bylaws, it says 5 regular members and 2 student members. So is part of this suggestion to remove the, I guess, requirement to have 2 student members?
So it should be instead of the 5. Oh, hold on. Sorry. No, so it would just be 6 regular members, 2 student members. And then, now I'm sorry. Now I'm all confused.
No, so Kate, I think it was supposed to be with a proposed change to add an ETJ member, you would have a total of, let's see, okay, now I'm getting confused. So you have 5 regular members now, right? And 2 students, so you have a total of 7. So you would have 6 regular members, one of which would be an ETJ member, and then 2 students. So it would be a total of 8, right? A total of 8, but it would be 6 and 2.
I don't think there's any ex officio.
Yes.
Yes, and
thank you guys for that.
The ex officio as well. So, yes, definitely.
Yeah, and the only question is, I think, it's good rules of order to have boards that consist of odd number of members, just so you don't have a tie in voting. But yet, unlike the presidential race last week, we have never actually encountered a situation where we've had, a tie in voting. So I guess I'm a lot less concerned about the even number.
Yeah, I think it's rare when you ever end up with an even number.
Yeah. Well, I'm good with this. And then, Peyton, are you trying to bundle this with some other bylaw changes so that we vote in unison to those changes?
I will, and like I said, they're just minute changes, which I will send a draft out as well, so we can all review that and maybe discuss it at the next meeting, perhaps. But of course, everyone will be in the know and have a chance to review the potential new bylaws.
Or I guess more correctly, per Shelley's guidance, we recommend these changes and then they're voted on by the city council.
As far as the membership, yes. Now, the other little stuff can be handled strictly by the board, but when it comes to membership, if you want to add another member, like an ETJ member, and still keep the ex officio, you will need to ask. And in fact, I would ask the council 2 things. Can you, if you, I'm not sure their policy, but you'd want to have an ETJ member added, then we would need to find out, and maybe I can find out before Monday, if you have to advertise for that, or can we just have them on Monday if you talk to them on Monday and they agree with adding an ETJ member, if they'd be willing just to appoint Sharon to that position right then and there, or whether we have to advertise for it.
Hey, my only question is, Sharon, how do you feel about being called an extraterrestrial?
Hey, it's totally fine. I hardly have any services here at all. I'm amazed I'm on this meeting and seeing everybody's wonderful faces. So joys of living in the ETJ. You're out in the sticks.
Yes, you're ETJ member.
You're close enough, though.
Absolutely. Wild to Belmont.
So I guess one other question. So with this change, that would mean that there would be a new open position as well, right? We would need to have another person join the team. Okay, join the committee.
Are you talking about the ex officio if Sharon gets moved?
Well, so we're increasing our total members from 7 to 8. So wouldn't there be now a vacant position, one of those 5 regular members?
No, I guess Sharon fills that
No,
position, right?
Well,
Yeah.
so my understanding is there's currently 5 regular positions, and Sharon is not one of them. She's currently the ex officio representative. She's not a voting member, right? Peyton?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so my understanding now, were you just going to add one more position, which would be the ETJ position? So there'd be 6 regular, one of which is an ETJ, and still 2 students. That would bring you to 8, and then if Sharon gets moved, then you'd have an ex officio. If Sharon has to apply or we have to advertise an interview for the ETJ position, she would stay in the ex officio until somebody is appointed to the new ETJ position. I hope I have that right. Did I say that right, Peyton?
Yes. From my understanding, yes.
Okay. So I think what's confusing is on the screen, I'm looking at the screen, and you have 6 regular members, and then you have ETJ member below, and then ex officio member. And that would really, I think that, yeah, 6 regular members, one of which is the ETJ. Right. Okay. So now I'm straight. I just wanted to make sure I remember.
Sorry about that, everyone. That was definitely me.
Yeah. And then you have 2 students. You have 6 regular, one of which is ETJ, 2 students. That brings it up to 8, and then you maintain the ex officio member. Okay.
Yes.
There we go.
Well, if it's optional. Okay.
Have we totally confused everyone?
No, I'm good with this.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Thank you. Sorry if my question confused you guys more, but I'm clear now. And I would support this change.
Yeah, and I appreciate everything that Sharon's done and contributed, and always thought of Sharon as a voting member. So this actually is a bit of a surprise to me.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully on Monday we'll make that official. So.
Yes.
Great.
Okay. So I'm guessing, Peyton, do we need a motion on these changes as well? Or not really?
Not yet.
On council's approval. Yeah. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
With the bylaws. Okay.
Yes.
This is like Congress. We have to bundle different things into a legislative act.
Government.
It's called pork.
I was gonna say, hopefully no pork barrel legislation coming through here. So. All right. So I think that is all on the official agenda, unless anyone had any other items.
Shelley called out that we might want to ask the city council for funding for any of these projects that we have for our work plan. And one thing that I wanted to kind of just ask or bring up is that if we do try to do a virtual event, I don't know what kind of costs are associated with that, but it seems like there are a lot of organizations that have done virtual events lately that we might be able to find out from somebody. But I was thinking that might be one thing that could potentially, require special funding. Would that either come from special funding designated for the ESB, or would that come from like event planning through the city of Belmont?
Do you want to take that, or did you want me to jump in?
I'm not 100% sure, so maybe could you take it?
Okay. So my thought behind that is, as you go through so there is, to answer your question, there is funding in the event funding line item in the city budget. And it's typically a certain amount for each event. I can't tell you off the top of my head how much it is for the Earth Day, Arbor Day celebration, because sometimes it varies on vendors that you get as well. But what my thought was on funding is this board has asked a couple of times if there was any funding set aside, and we always said, well, whatever you guys want to do, we'll find the money. And I find it out of the planning budget. I may take it out of office supplies or something like that. And one of the surprises for us was like the tree tags. They turned out to be a little more than we anticipated. It was between $500 and $600 for those tags. And it's stuff like that we want to keep going. And maybe you want to do some small programs, and I think you guys had, you did something in the schools where you bought these bins and put them in the schools. Were they for Crayolas, or they were sponsored by Crayola? But anyway, it's always a good idea to ask if the board, to help support your initiatives, whether it's trees, recycling, energy, whatever it is, that to put it out early, that you would respectfully request, maybe $1,000 be set aside to help support initiatives this upcoming year. And then as we start tracking your work and keep accounting if we need to up it every year, or come up with a really neat tree planting program where you want to buy trees for neighborhoods or something and let people plant them, we can ask for more as we develop programs. But I think it's just really nice to know that you have a little cushion if you come up with a really neat initiative, and it's all about, you just need money to be able to find it for you.
Okay, great. I think we can certainly add that to our discussion on Monday.
Great.
I have an item for other business. Really quick. So our assistant city manager and our upcoming public works director came, and they are working on the new recycling contract and want to push out a quick little survey just to kind of get feedback from residents. And so we had a meeting the other day, and they're basically just trying to get feedback, because from the way it sounds, it's going to be kind of potentially pretty expensive to keep recycling. So they're just trying to get a feel of how the public will feel about keeping recycling versus how much they would pay each month, in addition to keep curbside recycling. And so they've asked the ESB to just review these 5 questions, see if they would have any changes or alterations to these, just because they know that y'all deal with a lot of recycling. And so they wanted your feedback on this survey that will be pushed out probably next week, if not at the end of this week.
Hey, Peyton, the only thing I might say is on that first question, I think everybody probably puts their recycling bin out every 2 weeks. So I wonder if the question might be better served to ask, how important to you is it to recycle from your home, or something to that effect? Because I think
Okay.
everybody
on a scale
recycles.
of one to 5.
Yeah.
Agreed. I think that first question's vague. Yeah, I think trying to get a sense of the importance they place on recycling.
And so maybe have the answers very important, somewhat important, just kind of have a Likert scale for that.
Yeah, scale of 1 to 5, or don't make it too
Okay.
big, too complicated.
Okay.
I mean, do most residents have a sense of what they're currently paying for recycling? That might be good to note that in number 3.
Okay, I'll make that note as well.
That's a great call out, Jennifer.
So it's in the water bill. I have no idea how much it is, but it's
Well,
probably a portion.
I was looking at that and I was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
where we fall now. Yeah.
Exactly. By the way, the water bill changed this past month or so. It looks so much nicer. I mean, the other questions seem to be good, especially number 5, just asking for open-ended comments.
I think number 4 will be telling. I'm guessing a lot of people might not go through the trouble. So
if it was discontinued, would you move away from Belmont?
Well, okay, well, thank you for that. I'll take this feedback back to our assistant city manager for review.
Thanks, Peyton.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Any other topics or comments or questions?
I think our next meeting is scheduled for December 9th. Is that correct?
I believe so. Let me just double check. Yes.
Okay. It's not like I'm traveling anywhere right now, so I just need to put it on my calendar.
Okay.
All right. Good discussion.
Great. Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining, for your contributions. So we'll look forward to getting what feedback we can from council on Monday.
Definitely.
Good
Thank
evening.
you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night, guys.
All right. Thanks.
I was just wondering, would you be able to send out the information for the city council workshop to the whole group? I don't think I can commit to making it, but if I can, I'd like to be there.
Okay, I can just send out a reminder.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You
Evening.
too.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.